tonight our word is propitiation. And we are going to spend the next time, however long it takes. I will have you out here by 7, guarantee it. I don't care if I have to just shut up in the middle of a sentence. We'll be done by 7, okay? Here's the thing. This is an interesting word. It's one that is obviously not used very often in just general conversation. And in fact, it is used only, at least in the New American Standard Version, which is what I use, and so it can't be many more than that if there are in other versions. It is only used 4 times in the New Testament. And it is not used in the Old Testament at all. Okay, now there'll be more on that later because there's a slide coming up. But there's a couple things I want you to understand about this particular word. One is that it, like I said, it doesn't get used in the Old Testament. However, the idea behind it does, okay? It's only used 4 times in the New Testament, but it's important for us to discuss this because of what it actually means. And secondly, there's 2 things, the second thing I want you to understand is that it is very closely related to mercy, as you'll see. All right. So, let's see if this thing actually does work. Oh, yeah. See, wasn't that fun? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to read, first off, well, we'll read this one first, being it's up. We're going to read all 4 verses or sets of verses, I should say, that have this word in it, just so that we'll kind of lump them all together, and then somewhere along the line in the course of discussion, we will cover some of these again, but I want us to at least know the verses that there are, and this is the first one. So, with that in mind, who'd like to read this for us? You can read off here out of your old, doesn't make a difference. Who said that? Okay, go ahead, Alice.
Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. One who does not love does not know God, for God is love. By this the love of God is manifested in us, that God has sent his only begotten Son into the world, so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son into the world to propitiate for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another.
All right, thank you. Number 1. All right, turn the page. Oh, yeah. The first thing that makes sense to do, I guess, is to identify and to define the word. So, here's what it says. It says to make favorable, or to appease or stop someone from being angry or discontented, to placate or pacify. All right? In an atonement idea, it's a sacrifice that satisfies God's demands for sin. Okay? That is in itself what propitiation is. All right? Any comments on this? Anything you don't understand about this word? What it's, anything subsequent to this. Okay. Oh, by the way, the general rules apply in my class. You got something to say, don't be afraid to say it. I guarantee you I won't laugh at it, at least not while I'm here. Okay. Even if you don't have anything to say it anyway. We don't care. All right. We'll sort it all out as we go. All right. Let's go, what we're going to do is we're going to read the other 3 verses at this time, and this is where Jeff comes in. He's going to look these up for me. The first one is in Romans chapter 3, verses 21 through 26. And I will, of course, need a reader for that. Not because I can't do it myself, but because I'm trying to get everybody motivated here, okay? All right, who'd like to read this for us? Romans chapter 3, verses 21 through 26. Again, you can read off here out of your Bible. Doesn't make a difference to me. Did I see a finger, a hand? Anyone? No one? Oh, go ahead, Crystal.
But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God is made
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's that word again, okay? Now you have an idea of what one of the other scriptures is. Now let's go to Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 through 18. And we should run across this one again. Anyone? Anyone? Go ahead.
Therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, himself likewise also partook of the same, that through death he might render powerless him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and might free those who through fear of death were subject to slavery all their lives. For assuredly he does not give help to angels, but he gives help to the descendant of Abraham. Therefore he had to be made like his brethren in all things, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For since he himself was tempted in that which he has suffered, he is able to come to the aid of those who are tempted.
Okay, thank you. Are you seeing a pattern develop here as to what the course of action had to be? All right. Let's go to 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, please. 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Oh. Anyone? Joe, go ahead. Thanks.
My little children, I write these things to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. He himself is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for others.
Okay. We already read the one in 1 John chapter 4, has already been read. So there are the 4 times in the New Testament that the word is used, okay? So I wanted to make sure we read them all at one time, just so that we get them out there. We'll discuss each one as we go, actually, in different contexts, but remember, and a couple times the word mercy was used in the verses that we've been reading. Did you realize that? So mercy and propitiation are closely related, and at times they're even parallel. All right, now this is not anything in my notes. I just happen to know that is the case, because when the words propitiation and mercy are used together, it shows that there's a definite connection between the two. Okay? All right. Having so fun. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on. Wait a minute. Hang on. Did I get too far ahead? Hold it. Oh, no. No, that's right. I'm sorry. Oh, well, what do I know? Anyway, now, and I'm doing this not because I am any kind of Greek scholar, so don't even begin to think that, because that's not true. I'm going off of what Jeff already had prepared, all right? And, and he knows a lot more about Greek than I do, but I think it's probably good to realize what the root word means, all right? Now, it's interesting that the word propitiation comes in a number of different forms, all right? This first form is a verb form, and we all know what a verb is, right? Anybody ever go to school and learn what a verb was? Or, I mean, I need to know. I never went to school, but I'm asking. What's a verb? I thought I heard an action. Is that true? Is that, I mean, yeah, if you know, just go ahead and say it. You know, it's just, you sound like you really weren't sure, but yeah, that's it. All right. Here's the Greek word, that's a verb called, now, I may just butcher this, hilaskomai, is that right? Or may? Close enough. Well, yeah, all right then. Well, it's close, but what is it actually? Hilaskomai. So ko has an accent on. Okay. Well, see, Anyway, you see, the thing of it is I know that you'll never remember this, okay? But I do want you to understand that the word itself comes in various forms. And it gives you some examples here in Luke 18 and in Hebrews chapter 2, which is, and again, and the word, you notice, what is it actually translated in that case? Merciful. Remember I told you the connection between the two? It says, he beat his breast saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. An action. All right? In other words, something has to be done. Same way in Hebrews 2:17, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest. All right? Again, inferring action. So that's one form of the word propitiation. Secondly, we have a noun. Oh, here we go, man. We are. Now I feel like an English teacher here, but I'm pretty sure. I'm going to guess, because you knew what verb was. I think. What is a noun? Person, place, or thing. Now you see, now that is the canned answer if I ever heard one. But that's true. It's exactly what it is. Person, place, or thing. If you've never remembered anything else from English, we always remember that one, right? All right, okay. So, but what does it actually mean? It's something is the name of something or the form of something means it's the noun is the person, which in this case would be Jesus, of course. The place is nowhere in particular, but the thing, of course, is the act of appeasing, or the act of taking care of a requirement by God. 1 John, chapter 2, we already read this. He's the propitiation for our sins. 1 John chapter 4, we read this one also. Alice read this one, I believe. So you see, in that instance, the word halasmos, maybe, give or take. Okay, thank you. See, we're getting really, really good at this. Halasmos is the noun form. All right. Now, to make things really, really interesting, there are actually adjective forms of this word. So you see, this word, even though it's used so sparingly, really has a lot of kick to it. You know what I'm saying? There's another form, and we haven't got there yet. There it is, the noun form. Another noun form is the mercy seat of God. Now, what exactly was the mercy seat of God? This is where you participate. What was the mercy seat? Pardon me? Ark. The ark itself? Huh? That's all right. You're on the right track, yes. Hal?
The mercy seat was one that was the seat of God on the ark, and it stood between the wings of the two seraphim.
Wow. It's pretty heavy. That's what you meant, wasn't it? Yeah, well, see, I knew that. Okay. But that's what the ark was, and that's what the noun verb, the mercy seat of God. And that's in Hebrews 9 and 5, where it talks about the mercy seat, all right? So, and I knew you knew that, okay? But it's important that it's amazing how this word is so expansive in nature. And then it also talks an adjective form. Now, what does an adjective do? See, again, we're going to continue our English lesson here, and then we'll actually move on to something that I understand, okay? Maybe. What's an adjective? Describes a noun. Yeah. Well, that's the way I understood it. Now, I'm not the brightest star in the universe, but that's the way I thought it was. That's what I thought it was. Okay, so in other words, the word itself can mean it can be a verb, it can be a noun, or it can be an adjective, depending upon how it's used. Okay? So, and and this is Hilasterian. Does that sound reasonably close? Oh, wow, so I'm 2 out of 3 now, see. So this is I'm very proud, very proud. Anyway, Oh, and there's another one I get a chance to mess up yet. And that is Helios. Close? Yeah, see, there you go, 3 for 4. I had a good day at the plate. All right. And the adjective here, I will be merciful to their iniquities in Hebrews 8 and 12. And in Matthew, you know, in other words, the idea is that he's describing something that will, he's making a descriptive term here, describing something, all right? And that's the adjective form, all right? Now, that's as far as I go as far as the Greek is concerned. So lest you think that I really knew what I was talking about, that's not true. Now, I was reasonably sure as far as the verb, noun, and adjective go, okay? But the rest of it, it's just food for thought. Just to let you know that this word does appear, and it does have meaning. And depending upon where it appears and what its context is, will determine upon what form it is. And that's not so unusual, is it? No. All right. Now we're going to get into the Greeks. The reason for propitiation. Well. Because of the sinful ruin of the human race. Now, what do you suppose that means? Do you think we got a mess going on here? What makes you think that? Come on. You can do this. I know you can. What makes you think this? The sinful ruin of the American race. What does that mean to you? Anyone? Yeah, 1 John 4. Talked about that, didn't it? Yeah. And how do we know that there's a lot of hate? The pardon?
The way people act,
Yeah. The things they do, things they say. Think about all that's happened just in the past week that leads to the depravity of the human race. How we have gone so overboard that we now sometimes do not realize right from wrong. Oh, we'll denounce it, so we can't be doing this, but then it continues on. But there are other wrongs that happen in this country that are not godly either, that we accept, or other people accept as being perfectly fine. Yes, Jeff?
Well, when you compare it with Israel and us, I mean, God condemned Israel for selling themselves into slavery. Human trafficking is as bad now as it's ever been in the history of mankind. But we look at idol worship, and we worship sports, and we worship so many things that they take the place of God. And then we look at even you sacrifice your children to the fires of Molech. We have born more children a day than Israel did in their history. And so, we're worse than they ever were.
And we try to justify it, don't we?
Yeah.
We try to rationalize it away so many different times. Look at the different situations that are going on in the world as far as same-sex marriages. That's just an example, and the list goes on and on of all the things that are going on that make our society no different than what was going on way, way back when. Only we have a tendency to try to rationalize it away and try to say, oh, well, because God loved us, he has to accept all this. Well, this is what propitiation is. Basically, it is not a matter of, it's a matter of acceptance, but it's accepting of God on his terms, not on our terms. That's really what it comes down to. Hal?
There's a reason when we read this here in Romans, and it uses the word passive. And
Yes.
Because
was the one who paid the price. Absolutely. All right. And this is where we get to the next slide, I think. Oh, did I push the wrong one? Oh, there we go. Okay, first off, and of course, we could talk about this all night long, really, okay? But the first part about, because of the sinful ruin of the human race, and that's because we have become so desensitized to things and activities and things that are wrong that we totally ignore them. Or we try to say it's okay, God loves us, everything is going to be fine, but it never really tells us that. It never really tells us. In fact, it tells us just the opposite. If you study the Bible, you'll find out just the opposite. All right? Second point, the reason for propitiation is because of the righteousness of God. And it brings up there Romans chapter 3, verses 25 and 26, which we have already read. Okay? In view of his perfect holiness and righteousness, it is clear he must be perfectly propitiated or satisfied. Okay? In other words, God has to be satisfied that something has been done for us. For us to stand before God, okay, and say, hey, I am one of your children, and for him to recognize that. And again, this is on his terms, not on our terms. We have a tendency to turn that around and say, I have the right to determine when I can stand before God and if I should stand before God, and the thing of it is that's not true. God has always determined that. Or propitiated or satisfied before his love can operate freely in grace. That's where grace comes into the picture. On Wednesday night, downstairs, our class, we're talking about grace this week. We talked about it last week. We're going to talk about it again this week. Okay? The necessity of propitiation is met in the death of Christ for sinners. Very, very important. That need for satisfaction, that need for appeasement, that's how it is satisfied. Because, and this is I underlined this section because I find this extremely important. The next section. The Bible reveals again and again that the death of Christ was a sacrifice for sin. True statement, right? All right. And these many references can only be explained on the basis of the doctrine of propitiation. If God had not needed to be propitiated, which in other words, be satisfied, okay? If he had not had that need, there would have been no reason for Christ to die. What do you think about that? What's the connection between the two? Between Christ's death and propitiation? Is it true? What's here? Yeah. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I hid behind here just so I couldn't see it, and then you peeked around the corner anyway. Okay, Bruce. Sorry.
Is that interesting that the inference is God is not satisfied?
Yes.
And then the amazing verses like John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
Jesus, and these verses that you read today, put them all together. That is why Christ is the only option of satisfaction. To me, all these other religions, all people who say, not only can God accept me as I am, I'm already a child of God. I heard 1 John chapter 2, that was interpreted for God. Not only did he die for our sins, but for the whole world. They interpreted that as the world is saved for the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ. For all is saved. I find it amazing that without Christ, the wrath of God is poured out on that person.
That's right.
He's promising.
Now, does that mean that God is not a just God?
I think he's trying to prove he is a just God.
Well, that's the whole point, yes. Because he has to be just. It's in his nature. That's what he does. So, and we're going to talk about justification here in a little bit, but that's very important. Did I see another hand? Oh. Oh, you're not done yet? Sorry.
Joyce, it was your family.
Well, yeah, okay. I'm going to let that go, all right. I had something smart to say, but then I always get in trouble when I do stuff like that. So, you see, I'm getting older and wiser. Yes.
Okay, Ron, whatever you did, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I'm not sure what I did, but it's not unusual for, usually I'm the one that forgets what I said, but I'm sure it was very good, though.
I remember. If you watch any news,
Yeah,
there is a,
which how can you help it today? Man,
but there's a big insinuation politics sets norms.
oh yeah.
There's a big movement on that. Big movement of judging your right, your wrong. That is going on in the media every day. And yet God is saying, you're not just, I'm just. And you prove that you're not just by the way you judge. Is your standard of fairness. And God says, my standard is never fairness.
That's right. That is right. Boy, you know, we could go so deep into this topic, we could get mired down for a long time. But I can't do that. And just because I said I'd get you out here by 7:30. So I knew you were paying attention when I said that. All right. Anyway, no, it's, but yeah, that's right. And that's important. That's why when it said, if God did not need to be satisfied or propitiated or appeased because of the sinful nature of man, and if he did not need that, there wouldn't have been any reason to send his son to save everybody. But he did, because there was that need. God had to be satisfied. There was, yes, J.C.
I got a question, man. It's the account of Moses and his burning bush.
Mhm.
A little bit of a foreshadowing of this topic. He was told to remove their shoes. Ground your stand on holy ground. Something had to be done by Moses to speak to God. Is that an example of what's about to come? Study there, Jesus.
Well, there,
It's necessary to do something to approach God.
I would say yes. And I think that's where the inference of the propitiation, this is one of the examples of the inference that, even though it doesn't use the word, infers that it had to happen. We had to be able to approach God. All right? And that is the connection. Even though it doesn't use the word, the idea is there. All right? So, it's good. It's good. Anybody else have an idea on that? Now, see, I didn't do what a good teacher does when somebody asks a question. You say, well, what do you think, guys? You know, I should have done that. See, that takes the heat off me. But I do definitely see the connection. And that's just one example. There's a lot of them, okay? And thank you. All right. So, I have a list of scriptures here, and let's see. Well, for the sake of time, we'll go through a couple of them, just to give you an example. Let's go to Isaiah 53, 5 and 6. He'll bring it up here so somebody can read it. These are fairly short, so we'll be able to. Isaiah 53, 5 and 6. Now, everybody's familiar with what is in Isaiah 53, right? All right. I figured you probably would be. Who'd like to read that? I'd read it, except I haven't got eyes in the back of my head, so you're helping me out here. Isaiah 53, 5 and 6. Thank you.
But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed.
explains exactly why God had to send Jesus for us. Because we had all fallen astray, and we talked about the ruin of the human race. We'd gone astray, and we needed to come back. It was important. All right? And this was one way it was to be done, was through Jesus Christ. It was the only way it was to be done, actually. How about 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and 4? When it comes up. Somebody grab it and go for it. Don't care who. 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and 4.
For I delivered to you as of first importance that what I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried and was raised on the third day according to
Okay. And what do we call that, by the way? Starts with a G. Gospel. I heard the magic word. Who said that? Ah, you're the winner. All right, yes, that is what we call the gospel. Okay? Jesus died, was resurrected. Okay. Now, had there been no need for Jesus to come, what difference would it make? Right? If God wouldn't have had to have been, again, I'll use the word appeased or propitiated, if he didn't have that need to be propitiated, why worry about that? All right? How about Galatians 1 and 4? When it comes up. Galatians 1 and 4. All right. Anyone?
He gave himself for our sins so that he might rescue us from this present evil age according to the will of our God and Father.
Okay. This age can mean when? Anytime, right? All the way back to the beginning, from when it all started in the Garden of Eden, all the way up to today, when the terrible things that are going on today. Now, they are fresh in our mind, but the thing of it is, think of all the bad things that have gone on over the centuries. Terrible. God, inhumanity, people's inhumanity and their relationship to one another and how they treat one another and the things they do to one another. Oh, and then also in Galatians 3:13, if you would, Jeff, 3:13. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. Wow, that's serious stuff. How about Hebrews 9:22? Hebrews 9:22. And also 28. Hebrews 9:22. And according to the law, one may almost say, all things are cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Ah, true statement, right? All right, and 28, for Christ also, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time for salvation without reference to sin to those who eagerly await him. Why? Without reference to sin. He'll appear a second time, but it's not going to be because he's here to save everybody. Why is that? Already done it. It's already been done. Is that good English? No. Anyway, it's already been done it. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's why he's not going to do it again. He's already done it. All right? Well, I also have some in 1 Peter, but we're going to move along here. Let's see, let's go on to the next one. I'm not sure. No, I thought I was. Did I miss something
Yeah, let me get you back into this.
here? Oh, sorry. I'm looking for a description of propitiation, substitution in the Old Testament. That's what I'm looking for. Oh, there we go. And this is what I brought up before. The doctrine of propitiation itself is not mentioned in the Old Testament, but when we examine the offerings of the Old Testament, substitution is evident. In other words, doesn't use the word, but the idea is there. All right? Many of those offerings are types or pictures of what Christ has done, who is their fulfillment and the only perfect substitute. So you see, what has happened is in the Old Testament, and we know this according to Hebrews and a lot of other places, that the sacrifices that were made could never do away with the sins. We know that, right, Hal?
Well, we can go right back to Genesis 4, when Cain and Abel made their sacrifices, and God says to Cain, if you offer what's right, you'll be pleasing. And then it says,
Yeah.
sin is waiting there for you, and it's up to you to walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that idea has never changed. Unfortunately, we've never really caught on to that. That's where the real problem comes in. There's a lot of things we realize, but sometimes realizing things and doing something about it are two different things. Okay? All right. Moving along here, I think. Yeah. Substitution in the New Testament. Okay? Christ's sacrifice was singular. Was offered once and for all versus the many offerings of the Old Testament. And of course, this is Hebrews 9:28, which we read. Christ's sacrifice was singular. What exactly does that mean? It was offered once, and then what? Will it be offered again? Absolutely not. No reason for it. Why? Because it took care of the propitiation that God required. The appeasement of the sins that have been committed from history to today. And continue on. It takes care of that. All right? This sacrifice was singular. The sacrifice was sufficient. Well, when something's sufficient, what does that mean? Yeah, we're good. In other words, there's no need for anything else. We don't need every year we don't have to go kill goats and doves and whatever else. We don't have to do that. We don't have to go back and be rebaptized, and you don't have to do all that. It's all been taken care of once for all, right? So when something is sufficient, then that means that it has been taken care of, and there's no reason rehashing that. Now, there are times in life where we think that we cannot ever take care of something unless it's like we can't give up the idea that there's something wrong, and that we can't ever be, a certain way. You ever feel that way sometimes, where you just feel like you've left us, a stone unturned or something undone that you should have done? You ever have that? Is it, Hal?
Ron, we live in a society where everybody and tries to sell us that there's more, better, greater, and we have trouble grasping that there is nothing better than what we do.
Yep. Everybody agree with that? Anybody want to comment further on that? That's an interesting comment. Can we improve on something that cannot be improved? Can we change something that we have no right to change? Hal, I don't think you were done yet. Oh, no, you were done. Oh, okay. Oh, that's it, huh? Okay, well, somebody else's turn then.
I would say we changed things.
Oh, there you are. Okay, the guy behind the pole. Yeah, I got you.
Well, we changed the plan of salvation. All you gotta do is pray this prayer and say, mankind's changed.
What?
And it wasn't even practiced up then, but all of it changed.
Oh,
So, yeah, there is this attitude sometimes that something's broken, I can fix it with my hands.
but the question is, why is it broke? Who broke it? Did God break it?
That's a good question. Really throws me off as the people think they can fix it.
Yeah.
We become some people trying to fix a broken God rather than broken people looking to God.
Oh, I should be writing that down. That is profound. I like that. I mean, really, think about it. It makes good sense. Thank you. Now, that is worthy of more discussion. Do you realize how often and I've talked about this in my Wednesday night class a number of times, where we feel we have the right to make up the rules. And we have the right to decide what we should do and shouldn't do. And we have the right to tell God, I think you need to accept this. And we don't have that. Don't you realize that? We don't have that. And I think you do. And I'm not telling you because I think you don't understand that. But I think that all too often, there are enough people that think that they can do that. And it creates some real issues in our society, definitely in the church, and definitely among those in denominations who they just keep going off in the wrong direction, and it's going to be awful hard to get them back. Okay, Hal first, and then J.C.
Well,
I saw him first. I don't know if he was first.
I think that's right. Is many times people look at this and say, well, God wants a sacrifice for sins. We have to satisfy God. The fact is, God is exactly where He started. He just wants us to come back, and He gives us a way to come back. It's sort of like the married couple that had been married for a number of years, and the wife complained that he never sat by her, and he looked over at the other side of the car and he said, "Who moved?" And sometimes I wonder if God looks at us and says, "Who moved?"
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. J.C.?
I really appreciate these one-word studies, especially with some of the things we're talking about, current events.
Well, I hesitate to dwell too much on it, but it really is so pertinent with so many things.
One of the things that's going on today, my observation is they change definitions, they change words
Yeah.
to meet their wants and desires. I mean, perfectly good words that were used in the past have been changed to mean something else, and symbols and different things. There's some symbols I don't use, these little things on the phone, that are.
Hieroglyphics?
Misunderstand what I'm saying, one
Yeah.
is a rainbow. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I can't use that anymore.
Yeah.
They support a specific group of people, so I'm not gonna use that little picture anymore. Because I'm afraid who I was communicating with wouldn't understand that I was talking about God, they would think rainbow and something else.
Yeah.
So these one-word studies are a real
Yeah.
benefit to me, because I see so much words being changed and definitions being changed,
Yeah, it's sad. It's true. And that is that happens a lot nowadays, where there are so many things you cannot say. That are, like you said, they're perfectly legit, but the inference or the meaning of is totally changed now. And you have to be so careful that you don't offend somebody. Well, do you think God will be will think, man, I don't think I really want to offend you because you're doing this, because God is just. And we've already talked about that. God is who God is. So who needs to straighten out here? It's not God. We don't tell him what to do. He tells us.
We try, and we look at this
Yeah.
world, and
Yeah.
the world is divided, we try to pick a side.
Yeah.
We try to be morally right, all the things that make it right. And we pray about those things in the world that are going on. But I think what we really should be doing is praying to bend to the will of God, and not to the will of what the world wants or pick a side in any way. But no matter how you look at it, you can look at what the world's going on, all the things that are happening, either punishment or discipline. But we can always look at the will of God
right. Thank you. Lastly, on this particular subject, Christ's sacrifice was sensible. All right? In contrast to the Old Testament sacrifices where the victims were unintelligent and involuntary substitutes, and what does that mean in everyday vernacular? They were unintelligent and involuntary. Yeah. I don't want to offend them, but they were dumb animals. Sorry. But you know, that's the way it is nowadays. We have to be so careful about what we say. We're going to offend some, or someone, or something. They were animals who could not make their own decisions. They couldn't say, oh, I guess I'll do this. Okay, I think I'll do this, so you're going to be okay before God. Or they were involuntary, which means that they didn't have a choice. It's just going to happen. All right? So anyway, Christ in his sacrifice was willing to die and intelligently accepted the place of a substitute for sinners. He was just not somebody who could be taken and done to whatever they wanted to. Now, it made it look that way because he allowed it to happen, okay? But that's not true. Christ could have saved himself at any time, but he's not, because he realized he couldn't. He couldn't do that to his Father, and he certainly couldn't do it to us. And because of that, he made a conscious decision to actually do what he did because of us. All the way back. Think about the blessing in that, and what a great thing that is, and what a great sacrifice that is. It was a sensible thing to do. It was a sensible thing to do. All right, now we're going to zip through the rest of these. Knowing your need for propitiation, God was justified in forgiving sin. And propitiation means God is justified in bestowing righteousness. Propitiation is justified in bestowing all grace upon sinners. Okay, all favor, whether we deserved it or not, and we know we didn't. But he still did it. Grace. The reality of God's wrath. The Old Testament wrath, or the term wrath, now we talked about propitiation. The term wrath is mentioned. Now, I didn't count these, all right. I don't know where this figure came from, but obviously it was in the reading. I don't remember, but. Did you? Okay, well, see, there you go. Well, okay, within plus or minus 5 probably anyway. The Old Testament wrath, the word wrath is mentioned 585 times. Now, it could be just me, but that seems like that's an awful lot. So, does that mean that God is always mad? That's not what wrath means. Sure, he'd get upset, and he would punish people, and he would get rid of entire groups of people because of what they had done. But God's wrath has always been justified because he is God, and he has the right to do what he needs to do to fulfill his promises. Think about that. The reality of God's wrath, the remedy is propitiation. To turn away wrath by the satisfaction of violated justice. Hebrews chapter 9. We already read some of that. We could read it, but it's 7 o'clock. We're not going to do that. So I would encourage you to read Hebrews chapter 9, verses 1 through 14. That will tell you exactly how the wrath was satisfied. The idea of what propitiation is, it had to happen for God to be satisfied that he could bring man back to him. And that's why he had Jesus. And that is what, going back to the original definition, that is exactly what propitiation is. I'm going to read it one more time. To make favorable, to appease, to stop from being angry or discontented. Remember, God was the wrath. He was angry or discontented, to placate him or to pacify him. Okay? That's propitiation. Thank you very much for your comments tonight. Your participation is 7:01. Sorry. Thank you.